Good morning. I just finished The Ministry of Time by, I believe it's Kaylee Bradley last night, and I have some thoughts. I recorded them along the way. First, I'm going to jump into that. I'm going to give you my opinions that I recorded live as I was reading and forming them. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you my little bit longer review. So, we're going to jump forward to past Tiff. Okay, hopefully I film an introduction for this later. I wasn't going to do this. I was hoping not to do this, but here's another thanks I hate it. The Ministry of Time. I am reading this as a buddy read with my friend. She has not started yet. I'm ahead because reasons. So let me tell you the story of why I got this book. So my friend has been on a Libby hold for months for this book. And I walked into my library. We both use the same county library because we live in the same county. And they had it on a lucky day. I don't know if other county libraries do this, but our library does this thing called Lucky Day. If you find it on that shelf, you can check it out. You cannot hold it. They put so many books of popular books in reserve for lucky days, and you can only have it for 3 weeks. You cannot renew it. So mine is due back October 23rd. Today is October 18th. So I was like, I need to start this because I already got ahead of myself. I grabbed it for her. I texted her I was there, and then I walked around, and she hadn't replied, so I just grabbed it and was like, I'll check it out, and if she already has it, I will just bring it back. And so I messaged her that I was going to do that. And then she sends me a Snapchat. She's like, surprise! I also got it today at Lucky Day. So I was like, okay. I was like, well, you know what? Since I have it, why don't we both just read it together? It looks like it'll be an easy read. It should be fine. I've heard really great reviews about it. Like, I've also heard some bad ones, but I've heard a lot of really great ones. So I was like, maybe I'll give it a chance. It's out of my comfort zone. My goal was to read 10 out of my comfort zone books this year. I think this is number 10. So I'll give it a go. So I started reading it last night. She has not started yet because then her Libby hold came through. So she was like, I can push it back a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, I can't because mine's due back on the 23rd. I'm just going to go ahead and start it and try to get it knocked out. And so we started a Storygraph buddy read so that I can put in all of my thoughts and then she can see them as she finishes the book. Oh boy. So that was the start of that. Oh my God, my arms hurt so bad today. Okay. So let me hide all my drinks. I have so many drinks on my nightstand. Okay. This book. I am 70 pages in, and I'm having a really bad time. I like the concept. The concept of this book is that we're doing time travel, and we have these experimental people that we have taken from different times because they were supposed to die and have brought them forward in time so that we can monitor the effects of time travel on the mind and the physical body. And each of these people has been assigned what they call a bridge. That is basically a babysitter. Their job is to get them used to the modern day world and make sure that these people are safe, do like reports on them so that any health events or mental issues they're having can be dealt with. So our main character, we just know her as the bridge. She's never named. The very first line of the book is her being like, the interviewer said my name. I don't even say my name in my head. And she was like shocked the interviewer said her name. And I was like, girl, when you go to an interview, they call your name. They at least introduce themselves and like they greet you by name. What the fuck? You mean you didn't expect to hear your name? Come on. Come on now. I don't like it. So we don't know her name. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think we do get to know her name. So I don't like this already. So her bridge is from the late 1800s, and he was part of an Arctic mission or an Antarctic mission. Arctic mission. And he was a commander in the Royal Navy. We're in the UK. Our author's or our author and our main character's mother is Cambodian, and so it talks about constantly about how she's white passing and people don't recognize that she's non-white right away. But it sounds like actually people do. It's just that the more polite people don't bring it up. So this is like an issue for her, and I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna talk about colonialism and racism and that type of stuff, and use this literary slice of life to show how people could adapt to it, even if they're from a different era. Not really. We're kind of talking about it, but not all the time. And that would be fine. I wouldn't mind it if that was like the goal. It's a literary book. It can do a bunch of different things. But I don't know what we're trying to do. It was so boring. And then it's the banter between the characters. It's supposed to be funny. Okay, so I know I'm on the start of chapter 3, so I can lose my page because I don't know where my bookmark is. Okay, so here's an example. Where was that thing? This one. This scene is supposed to be funny. The book is supposed to be funny, I think. It's trying really hard to be funny. Gore, his name is Commander Gore. I thought he was a made-up person. She based him on a real person, and I find that uncomfortable. Because it means you can actually look up pictures of what this man looked like, and I find that uncomfortable. I don't know why. There were so many Arctic missions, you could have just made one up, and we would have believed it. I don't like that he's based on a real man. That makes me uncomfortable. Anyway, so Gore wouldn't watch television. He seemed to find it a tasteless invention. You can send dioramas through the ether, he said, and you've used it to show people at their most wretched. Okay, so we're judging TV watchers. Fine. It's pretentious. This whole thing it's pretentious and patronizing. No one's forcing you to watch EastEnders, is her reply. Any child or unmarried woman of virtue might engage the machine and be faced with the lurid examples of criminal behavior. No one's making you watch Midsummer Murders either, or deformed monstrosities against the will of God. What? Sesame Street, he said, and then had to busy himself with looking through his pockets for his cigarette, his tongue tenting his cheek as he tried not to laugh. I realize that's supposed to be funny. It's not. It's so forced. Finally, at a loss for anything else to do, he began to pick over the bookshelves. I hit a win with an early Arthur Conan Doyle, so then they just go through her pretentious taste in books and his pretentious taste in books. And I just... and then there's like... I mean, this goes on. So that was all the way back on like page like 30-something. So he manages to get himself an air rifle because he misses hunting. And she's like, we don't hunt these days. You can't go hunting. And she's like, I came down one morning and he'd killed all the squirrels in the garden. He'd piled them up in a grotesque furry cairn. What the hell? There's no need to swear. I have heard you talk to them in the roughest way about the lawn, so I thought I would dispatch them. They're dead. Of course they are. I'm a very good shot. How do you feel about pigeons? Leave the pigeons alone. As you please. Would you like these? You could make a lovely hat. It's supposed to be funny banter, and it's not. It's not. And then they go on about how he wants a dog. And she's like, we could get a cat. Cats are smaller. He's like, we do not need a cat. A little creature who sleeps for hours and plays with her prey. We already have you. Sir, ma'am, this is not funny. This is not funny. There's a scene where they get high. This is on page like 63 already. There's a scene where they get high. And he's like, what would you call the color on that fowl? Looking at the pigeons out in the yard. Lilac? He asks. And she's like, lilac. And he's like, oh, there. Is that lilac? Lavender? And she's like, what? And then we stared at each other. We creased toward each other and began to giggle helplessly. I get that you're high, but like, at least, what? I don't understand. And then they go inside, open a thing of chocolate biscuits, and he's like, we should have had this stuff in the Navy. And she's like, chocolate biscuits or weed? And he's like, both. Weed, that sounds very whimsical. Something that fairies would put in their pipes. And then she's like, if the Royal Navy had a weed ration in the age of sail, your Arctic journey would have ended up in Rio de Janeiro. Good, he says. That made us both start honking weakly again. I genuinely don't freaking get it. Like, people are eating this book up, and I'm just like, what? And I know there's a twist at the end because I'm looking at reviews and I clicked to reveal the spoiler because I don't give a fuck. And it sounds so dumb. The spoiler, the twist, oh my god. Okay, so I'm not liking this. And I'm so stressed because I know, I have a feeling my friend is gonna like this because our sense of humors are kind of different about a lot of things. And I have a feeling that she's going to find it funny and I don't. And I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Anyway, I think I'm gonna have a beer and I'm gonna try to keep reading this. Okay, so I read like another 150 pages or something like that of this last night. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know what it wants to be. I have 90 pages left. I have 90 pages left and I'm just ready to be done with it. I have so many issues. The at least like trying to be funny thing has kind of stopped, and now we're just like being pretentious. Like, we're just being pretentious. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it. I like texted him like the bare minimum, and I was like, I'm annoyed by the humor. And I sent him a picture of the cover, and he was like, are they trying to do, he's like, I can't decide if they're trying to do like knockoff Doctor Who or knockoff Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I was like, oh my god, it's kind of both. Like, it's kind of definitely like trying to be inspired by the humor in both of those things. And I can't. Also, I don't remember if I said this last one, but he's a real person in history. The Graham Gore is a real person, and this is him. And I have an issue with this for some reason. Like, it feels icky. Like, because we're like making up a story about a real person who existed and has family members that still live. Like, that feels so weird, especially because it was someone who died so tragically, like, by getting lost in an Arctic expedition. Like, I mean, not that explorers and colonists are great people, but it's still a tragic death for, like, people in their family. And separating the humanity from the action is still, like, if she made up all the other historical characters. I looked them up. They're all made up. Why did we have to make him real? Why couldn't we have just made up an Arctic expedition inspired by the real one, and like because there were so many real ones? Why didn't we just make somebody up? I don't understand that it bothers me. And now we've gotten to the point where we had a weird, okay, so we kind of switched. We were doing like a slice of life, kind of, this woman who works for the government is in a weird situation. We did like slice of life stuff, and then around like 120 pages we kind of switched a little bit, and it started kind of trying to be like a romance type thing. But girl got obsessed, like, real quick. And then we got, like, a spy thriller type of thing where they're, like, being chased by this spy from the future. And he had been in the ministry, like, the whole time. He'd, like, been in the ministry the whole time. And he was, like, claiming to be, like, a brigadier or something. So he has access to the building. And now we're like, oh, no, he's a spy. And he's trying to kidnap Graham and kill the bridge because we still don't know her name. And I'm like, what the fuck? So they had like a near-death experience. So then, of course, they had to fuck after. And that was like, it was like a couple days later that they did that. But like, now it's just become like about their romance. But like, they're in a safe house so that they can't be found by this brigadier guy. But they're being ferried to the ministry like every day because she's going through training to like protect herself. And Graham is now going to be a field agent. So he's like going through training. And so they're going to the ministry every day. They could literally just be followed back to their safe house. I don't understand. Why are we doing this way? And like, we have an unreliable narrator, which I usually like, but I don't like the way that we're doing this because we're being told the story. It's clearly our narrator, our bridge, is telling us the story of something that happened, and she's telling it from some point in the future from the events that happened, because then there's a fourth wall breaking paragraph that's like, you would think that I should do this, and you would think this would be the point of this. And I was like, okay, so we have an unreliable narrator who clearly knows what all these events mean and what's supposed to happen, and we're just supposed to kind of go along with it, but I can't go along with it, and I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated because the things that are being left out and the things that are being, the order things are being told in, it does not make sense, and I do not like it, and I am so very frustrated. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I honestly, I'm gonna lower this a little bit. I am so frustrated with this book. I don't get the hype. I really, really don't. A lot of times when I read a book, I can kind of see what people are enjoying about it and why it's so popular. This has a sticker that said it was a Good Morning America book club. I think the only thing I can see that people might be excited about is the romance part of this, because I could see it being like exciting. I could see it being like something that people who, especially those who grow up reading historical romances like my friend did, are like would be super like excited about and find like nostalgic and romantic. And I mean, there's a lot of women romanticize the Victorian man type of thing because in some ways they were maybe better than our current day ones, but I think it's just nostalgia paints history in different ways than reality does, which is kind of what the book was trying to do, but then it really didn't do that. There's this whole thing in here about like the people who write history are not the people who lived history, but it doesn't actually like do those things. So my big issue with it, as I said earlier, my big issue is the fact that this was a real man who existed. And she even like mentions that in like there's an author's note before the acknowledgments, and it's like she gives like a backstory of Graham Gore. It's like on May 19th, 1845, two ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, departed from Greenhithe in Kent to find the Northwest Passage, a then hypothetical route through the North American Arctic that would connect the United Kingdom with the trading kingdoms of Asia. And then she goes on to talk about what it is, right? And what happened to that expedition. And then she's like, I came across this in the only surviving letters by Gore, digitized by the website Arctonauts.com. He comes across as a humorous, self-possessed man who said of his career in the Navy, "But it may be very foolish. I have always had a presentiment I shall one day arrive at the top of the tree, whether I like it or not." So because of that, where he like didn't really want to be the top of like the military in any way, she made him be in one timeline in this book the head of the Ministry of Time. And so basically what happened is, I guess I haven't really given a lot of plot. So our main character, who's never named, and that kind of bothers me that she's never named, is the bridge between Graham Gore and modern day. And they fall in love, and then they have this kind of like epic spy thrillering adventure where they have to get away from some guy from the future who's trying to kidnap Graham and kill the bridge because she's in the way. But that's what it seems like. But then as things get revealed, we find out that the people that are trying to kill him are from the future, because the time door can only handle so many people displaced through time at a time before it collapses. And so these people want to go back to their time, but they can't go back unless some of these other people are put back or killed. I don't genuinely understand, because I don't think the author knew what she was doing, so it's never explained. Like, I don't think she understood what she wanted out of it, so it was never explained to us. And then we find out that the woman Adela, who the bridge has been speaking to, is actually her from one of these timelines. My hair's tickling my nose, it's driving me crazy. From one of these timelines in the future, and she's come back to try to fix some events in the past. And so she knows about the people from the future. And so she's trying to protect the bridge and Graham because, she's married to Graham. So, and they have like a 16-year-old son, and Graham is the head of the ministry, so he made her in charge of this program to go back and fix the mistakes. But what he wants her to fix is his friends Maggie, who is from 1665, and Arthur, who is from 1916. They were murdered, and he wants them not murdered. What we find out is that it wasn't actually the people from the future who did the murdering, it was the ministry, because the ministry couldn't use them as weapons, so they decided to kill them. What I don't understand is when there are so many modern day people that you can train to be killing machines, why would you go and pull someone from the past? Why would you expend those resources just to make them spies and field agents? That's the part I don't understand, because it doesn't make any sense why you would need them specifically for that. When you're going to have a traumatized person who's not going to react correctly to reality, who's not going to be able to necessarily always follow instruction, because it'd be better if you're trying to do government bad because they just want to make people weapons. It'd be better to have them kidnapping children and raising them inside the ministry in order to make them weapons, because that would be the life they knew. You can do a Natasha Romanoff with them and have them raised in it. Why would you need to go and collect them from a previous time? That's the part I'm struggling with on why we need these people. So our bridge is already doing things different than the timeline of Adela, who's back to correct things, because she's telling him about things in different orders, and she told him about the fact that they were all microchipped, and that made him completely lose trust in her, and he basically ended things with her and took Maggie and also a really big dickhead from 1645. I just knocked something over. Oh, my sheepskin fell. A really big dickhead from 1645 and run off with them. So then, like, she's crushed. She goes through this whole thing. Hold on, let me fix the sheepskin. Sorry, that was going to bother me just being on the ground there. So she goes this whole thing. She's like, ends up going back to the ministry. She fights the brigadier and also another bridge who is like actually being a mole and feeding the brigadier information because she's like, fuck the system. And my one thing, I don't understand, because we were kind of doing like government bad, but then the person who sided with the anti-government part was then like branded as kind of this like unstable, extreme activist, where she was like, oh, you're just siding with the government because you've become a fascist, and I didn't expect you, the only other minority person here who's been treated like shit by these people, to side with them. And she's viewed as like having the wrong point of view, and because our main character is willing to kind of be like, oh, I'll let that slide. Like, her name's like Samilia, and Samilia is like, you're falling in love with this man who has like microaggressed you, has othered you, views you as like something that is not necessarily 100% human because you're not white. And he has made like, I mean, he's made improvements, but he is still like constantly microaggressing her. And Samilia is viewed as like crazy for like pointing that out. And I don't understand what we were trying to do with that. And it just came off as kind of weird that we were discussing it that way. I mean, I'm not a minority race, so I'm not going to try to like say that that was bad or good. I just didn't understand pointing out why we would make the one who's pointing out microaggressions as a demonized person in this story, because she goes from someone that like our main character wants to befriend and looks up to someone who she thinks is absolutely insane. That I can understand, being like, oh, this person is not who I thought they were, and maybe I shouldn't look up to them. That is 100% a valid thing. But the reasons that she chose are kind of odd to me, and I don't understand them. I don't understand what we were trying to do with them. Because basically our bridge was like, oh, I'm willing to forgive his like faults, which are like him like microaggressing her, because I love him. And I was like, I feel a little weird about that type of thing, but again, it's not my place to say whether that's a good or a bad thing. I just felt weird, like, because as a woman, I would never be with a man who was constantly making small misogynistic comments, so I don't understand. Like, I just genuinely, I didn't understand what it was trying to do. I think it was really disjointed in the way it was presenting this story. She wanted to do like a paradoxical timeline type like thing, and I think it fell really flat for me. The other thing is the humor was not there for me. I did not appreciate this humor. Some of the lines, I read them to you in my first like live clip, and it kind of stopped trying to be funny partway through, and went to this like spy thriller, which I also didn't understand why we switched what we were doing. I think if it could have stuck with the slice of life, I would have just been bored. But when we switched to the spy thriller, I was confused and bored and then irritated. And also, like, as soon as I found out the fact that this dude, but none of the other expats were a real person, I got a little icked out by it, especially given that there were explicit sex scenes. I feel very weird writing explicit sex scenes with a real person in them, regardless of whether or not that person is alive or not. It just feels weird. And I don't like it. Personally, I don't like it. I find it uncomfortable that he was a real man. That is the worst part of this for me. Like, on top of it, because I could have forgiven it trying to be funny and not being funny. Like, I'm not funny. I know I'm not funny. I can have an occasional witty comment, but I would never try to write funny knowing that I'm not funny. That's what bothers me. So anyway, I gave this like a 2.5, and I think that might be generous. Because nothing in the writing really like was like, oh, this is bad writing or this is bad characterization. At least the characters were consistent, and as much as I didn't like our main character's level of obsession she had with Graham, she even at one point refers to him as, I wonder if I can find it. I can't find it without searching forever, but she even made a comment about wanting him in a way that she could keep him in like the vision of what she wanted him to be, something she could keep in her pocket. And I was like, that is such a weird way to think about someone that you claim to be in love with, that I just was like, nah, bro, I can't with this. So anyway, that's my really disjointed, random, like, I just finished this last night thoughts about the Ministry of Time. I could probably give you something better if I thought about it longer, but I don't want to think about this anymore. I just want to be done with it. And I'm going to go return this to the library today and be done with it. So, let me know if you've read this and you liked it and why. Like, because I think the only thing that I could see people were liking is finding the romance interesting and maybe exciting. But beyond that, I can't figure out what people would like about this. So, if you also didn't like it, tell me why, because I might have more reasons, and I might be that I didn't include, and I'm interested to know if other people have the same reasons. So, thanks for sticking around with me, and I'll see you soon.